I am so excited to be featuring Mr. Chris Smith, author of Be a Good Story. Chris, welcome to the Author Spotlight series. How are you today?
I am doing great, Tony, and space with you is always good, so I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so excited to be able just for others to be able to dive into your story, to your book, to new coming upcoming projects that you're working on. So excited to have this space with you as we dive deeper.
Let's do
Great.
it.
Awesome. So before I get started, I just want to read a quick section of your book from the introduction, if you don't mind, because this paragraph really speaks to me. So in your story, in your book, Be a Good Story, you say stories provide a window out of our small worlds to different peoples, places, and times. Stories are a shared experience. They extract us from isolation, from lockdown and social quarantine. They thrust us towards connection and invite us to a deeper relationship with each other and this world. I mean, that alone, right, makes you just really just question just the power that stories have in the world. So I want to kind of start there. Like take it into what Be a Good Story is. I know a little bit of a background based on how the title came to be, but share for us and for those listening kind of your journey and how you got started with this book.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Well, it started in all places in a county jail. And part of what I wanted to do is I thought that bringing mindfulness into a county jail for inmates could potentially be helpful. And so I did that for, at least a year and a half. And we had a routine, Tony. The routine was we would come in, we would sit in the chairs. We, believe it or not, we would do a little chair yoga, and then we would do a mindful practice. And then here's the thing that surprised me. The inmates wanted to hear a story. They wanted a story read to them. And so that's what we always did at the end of our time. We would pick out a book and we would read a few paragraphs. After one of those meetings in the county jail, what happened was the guard would come to the door, unlock it. The inmates would line up on the wall, they'd be patted down, and then they would go back to their dormitories. And it was at that moment when they were lined up, ready to walk back to their dormitories that I just overheard one of the um, inmates, I'm guessing looking over, his shoulder, and he said, "Hey, everybody, be a good story today."
Mm.
And that really touched me deeply because I was thinking about some of the stories that, we were reading, the stories about love, story about connection, stories about sadness and regret. And it just amazed me that here in maybe one of the most difficult places, stories mattered. Stories mattered.
I can see that moment vividly for you. So I'm just out of curiosity, after you left from that interaction with the inmates and the last thing you were left with Be a Good Story, did you immediately go home and say, I got to start working on this book? Like, what prompted you to say, this book needs to be told and I need to be able to write, start my own journey of authorship?
Great question. Actually, a couple things happened. Um, what that inmate said stayed in my body. I mean, I
Mhm.
just felt it just, I don't know, just hanging in there. I mean, it just wouldn't leave. And then by chance, I was helping out a friend who needed to coach somebody to get their certificate. And I volunteered. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to help you. And out of that session of coaching, it just like came out of me. I want to write a book. And I think what the inmate said is the first breadcrumb that I need to follow to write this book.
So, talk us through kind of like your journey from like this idea of you had to then going kind of navigating through your journey of authorship. You know, talking about that journey, what was kind of the high and low point that you had for yourself?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The idea of writing a book, Tony, was like so intimidating. I didn't consider myself a writer. In fact, I was told a number of times in my life that I was a very poor writer. And and so I decided when I wanted to do this coaching session to at least try something, just put something out there. I contacted a few friends and they connected me with someone that we both know, Laura Thomas. And Laura Thomas was the right editor for me, the right medicine. She was encouraging. What she did is this, which I'll never forget. She met my writing where it was. She met it where it was, Tony, and without any judgment. And what I submitted her the first time, I look back on it and I go, oh man, oh man. But she met me there, you know. I have such fond regards for her. And here's the other thing. And she asked me to do more. And she continued to ask me to do more. One of the things I joke about is I literally send her my heart. She may know more about me than my therapist, and that has not prevented her from giving me really clear, concise feedback. Write this again. Can you come at it at this angle? So that's one thing that I've always very much appreciated about her. The difficult times, for me in this process, Tony, has been the edits. When I get the edits back, I got to be honest with you. For 2 or 3 days, I'm like depressed. And then at some point I said, okay, let's come back here in the office. Let's start writing again. Let's just keep at it. And that often happens to me after getting feedback. I'm usually depressed for a few days, and then I just come back to it and just like, okay, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going.
You said something earlier that really kind of stood out to me, this idea that, people told you that you were a poor writer, right? And I think one of the things that you really just hit on is that even if that was the case, right? The beauty about it is that you don't have to be this polished writer. That's what you have people like Laura for, to be able to help take your ideas, refine it, but also keep your words and your themes and your messages intact.
And
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 go
I got
ahead.
to add one more thing.
Yeah, please.
For those who are in the editing process, one thing that occurred to me was that is where at times magic can happen.
Mhm.
Something that you might have forgotten comes up and you're able to write about it, or you're able to fit words around something that you are writing, and you go, "Oh, I think that's it." And so what I learned is, it's certainly for me challenging process, and yet there are these moments when the magic happens, and it's just such a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. So we learned about this, what inspired the book, the title. We learned about some of the ups and downs that you've had in this journey. Kind of take us through kind of a little overview of like what Be a Good Story encompasses. We know that I know there are like small stories about your own personal life that make up this book, but kind of give a overview for us, for new readers who may want to look at your book. Kind of walk us through kind of your book as a whole.
The arc of this book, and I've had feedback on this too, Tony, about the book, uh, is I've had this experience when I hear a story, like when I read your book, it brought up stories in my life. When I hear somebody talking, telling stories, it often brings up stories. And so the arc of this book is in me telling my own story, my hope is the reader connects with those stories in their life. And for me, those are the most valuable. It's sort of like where we started. That's the connection. That's our legacy. That's what we have to offer ourselves, our community in this world.
I like that. I like that. Were there any doubts outside of maybe you in the writing phase that you had as you were navigating your authorship journey? What were some of the doubts or fear that you may have had, even post-editing, when it came time to like, actually get this book completed? Were there any for you?
Nobody would read it.
Mm.
Nobody would read it. That certainly was one. And yeah, I think that's probably the main one that nobody would read it, and it would just sort of be out there and wither on the vine.
And I know just from some of the things you shared with me that that has not been the case. Your book has reached some audiences and some workshops and partnerships that you had over the last couple of years. Talk to us about that. Like you went from the self-doubt of no one's going to read it to now you do have people who are partaking in your book.
This is the other thing that I never anticipated, that it would end up in different places. Just a few weeks ago, I was giving a video recorded lecture on the book on storytelling. And the university is actually using my book as part of this curriculum that they are um, working on in terms of leadership. It ended up in Quantico, which is where the FBI trains. It was one of the featured books for the top tier of FBI agents. Um, and so I've seen pictures of it. I've had people send pictures of it out in the desert. They would take it out on a hiking trip and they would take the book with them. I've seen it on airplanes, taking pictures of the book on airplanes. And I had a high school friend buy the book and put it in our town of, by now, I think it's 1,200 people, the library. So it's just very satisfying seeing how this book has found its way in the world.
That is that's incredible, right? I think if you can look back at Chris when you first got started, the very first word that you may have wrote down on your Word document or in your journal, to now seeing your book being led at universities and curriculums and Quantico, could you ever imagine that that would have been what your life would have been like from the moment you wrote that first word to getting that book and at Quantico?
Absolutely not. And in addition, again, getting letters and emails
Mhm.
from people. The other thing too that for me was a gift with this book is to do book readings.
Mhm.
And what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it fundraising events for different charities. And so I was able to do a number of fundraising for different charities, domestic violence groups, preventing, of course, and scholarships for people with chronic illnesses. So that was another thing that, for me, the book gave back to me, that satisfaction of being able, that someone would invest in my creativity, and that in that creativity, I have this opportunity to invest in things that I care for.
Yeah. I'm curious, have you been back to the jail where you did the meditation, the mindfulness meditation, where you got the Be a Good Story? Have you been back to that jail since you published your book? Is that inmate still there? Did you give him a copy of your book? Like, I'm curious to know, like,
Yeah, great
yeah,
question. And I got a funny story. I got a story to tell you.
I would love to hear it.
Three weeks ago, I was sitting in the back pew of church, and we have this thing in the church where we greet everyone. And this person came up to me and they said, "Chris, Chris, isn't that you?" And lo and behold, it was a person who is doing what I did 15 years ago in the jail. She is now offering these practices to the inmates. So it was like a full circle
Yeah.
moment. And it was so beautiful. And I've not been back because they won't let me in. And of course, I don't know about the inmates. I've not seen, any of them since.
Okay. How awesome would it have been to be able to have that, that moment, like that last piece of you walking out of that jail inspired this whole journey. for you. I want to hear kind of your Chris's nuggets or words of wisdom, if you will, for maybe some new authors who are kind of contemplating getting their own book out there. What are some lessons from your own experience that you would share with them based on your learnings?
First, reach out to Tony. That would be number one. Um, I think finding an editor that you feel connected with. I remember you and I had a conversation about that. Um, I think just keeping at it. Like this week was more of a challenging week. I'm also writing on a book now. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just gonna work on one paragraph. That's all I'm gonna do. The other thing that I do, Tony, that works for me, it may not work for others, but for me, writing is a very intense experience. It's like my heart, my soul, my spirit is just like, and what I often do is I'll set a timer. I have a kid's timer here that I use.
Okay, love it.
I set it for an hour and I just totally give myself to writing and editing for that hour. When that hour is done, I'll go do something completely different. I'll fold clothes. I'll do the dishes. I need that. And then if I have the luxury of time, I'll come back. I'll set the timer again. And just that pace helps me, I think, be as fresh as I can with the writing.
Okay. And that brings me to my next question about kind of this larger vision that you have for yourself. You just mentioned that you're working on another project, book number two. I think also book number three as well. I think it's like two books coming out.
I have five, but we'll
Five.
talk about
Okay.
that later.
Okay. All right. So tell me a little, if you can give a little sneak preview into maybe book number two that you're working on and what that looks like for you. Is it a continuation of Be a Good Story, something totally different?
It's going to be something different,
Okay.
Tony. And I've struggled with a chronic illness the past few years, which of course has interrupted some of the writing process. But this book, I wanted to write about a gap that I felt in my own care. And this gap really speaks to mindset. What are ways that we can cultivate a mindset that gives us the best mental space to work with the uncertainty and unpredictability of chronic illness? And so I call this book a soft way, a Taoist approach to living with ulcerative colitis.
Hmm.
And what I did is I had this idea of taking two ancient wisdom traditions. So I took the wisdom tradition of the Tao Te Ching, which is an ancient Chinese text, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to cross it with, in our time, AI, which is kind of like our wisdom tradition, bringing together around ulcerative colitis. And then for me to rewrite all of that. And so that
Wow.
is what I did with this book.
Okay. All right. I look forward to reading that. I look forward to it. Like, okay, so book number you have one done, book number two in the works, and now I hear you have a total of five that you're probably working on over the span. Do you have is it like releasing a book every year starting, this year, or what did that look like for you?
Well, I don't know if you want this recorded, but it does take money.
I'm glad you mentioned it. It takes
It
an investment.
it depends on my work
Yeah.
and what I'm able to, how I'm able to provide and earn a living. And so it all really depended on that.
On that. Okay. So I'm excited that you have more projects in the works, and that's good to know. And I'm glad to know that Be a Good Story has had very good success so far, and look forward to seeing how that work continues. I want to kind of go over kind of two more questions, if you will, and I want to. This is more like a fun kind of personal touch, so we can just relax for a little bit. Kind of give us like either your favorite quote or a mantra that like inspires you, either from this point forward or that you've used throughout your journey of writing even Be a Good Story. Was there a quote or was there a mantra that kind of held you to the fire, like to keep you motivated, keep you inspired, keep you pushing when the moments got hard and rough?
Well, I have something a little different.
Okay.
I have a picture. This is a picture of my grandmother. She's
Mm,
holding my mom and my aunt. And this was the grandmother who was married to my grandfather, who at a certain point in their marriage, they traded their wedding rings to the jeweler and used the money to help me to complete college. So whenever I feel stuck, when it's challenging, when it's dark, when it's difficult, I keep this picture on my desk and I think of my grandmother.
mm. That is, oh, I'm getting chills. That is so inspiring.
Mm.
Um, Definitely way better than a quote or mantra could ever do. So, I mean, just to have that, and to have that background of like, um, struggle that we all had to go through in certain degrees, and to know that that picture is a reminder, like you have to keep going, right? And hopefully, maybe someone else down the road is a picture of you, and then say, hey, this guy got me through it, and this book cover got me through it.
Wouldn't that be
Whatever
something?
that looks like, for them. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for that. One last question for you is around kind of milestones, right? So, were there things that you did to kind of celebrate the milestones in your authorship journey, such as like getting your book cover done, getting the editing done, getting that first book in your hands? Like, what were some things or some milestones that you celebrated throughout your journey of becoming an author?
Well, I made sure to celebrate every one of them,
Good,
Tony.
good, good.
And they went from small things to big things. I'm a big fan, and maybe not everyone is, but I love matcha.
Okay,
And so I have actually a little matcha thing that I make. And with the little celebrations, like recently I just submitted the book to be formatted. So that was a little matcha there.
okay.
And then when the book would come in, you get the first copy, usually get the family around me, and we usually have a little ceremony and then looking at it, and that's a lot of fun. And I have to say, for me, the fundraising, that's something I intend to do with the next book as well. That to me is a celebration. One of my favorite ones, can I tell you this?
Yeah, please.
One of my favorite ones. Here I was, in front of it was at a church, it was a room full of people. And my dream of what I wanted to happen occurred. I read a little bit, but then I invited the group that assembled to share stories with each other. And they got so talkative, I became like, a speck on the wall. They were talking and laughing. And that to me was just a great moment where my hope was it wasn't just about me, but it was about all of us. And that's another a great moment for me in being able to publish the book.
And I think it sums up kind of perfectly that the first paragraph I read, kind of starting off this conversation about the power of stories and how they connect us. And in that moment, you had to lay the foundation and invite the space and bring the space for people to be able to be comfortable, number one. So that way you could be that fly on the wall and stepping back and say, wow, like look at the space that I created, right? So kudos to you, kudos to you. Chris, before we end, is there any golden nuggets that you want to leave or drop for those who may be watching about just finding strength in their stories, no matter the good, the bad, or the ugly, right? Any kind of words of wisdom you wanna drop and share?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say, Tony, is if you just have that thought, just trust your heart. Trust your heart. You will find your way through and you will find the people that will support you in this. It takes a community, it takes a village, and just know that that village is there. Sometimes it's just asking and reaching out. Like you, Tony, you are part of the village for me in this. I so much value you and all of the things that you offer. So I think trust your heart and also look for your village. They're there. They are out there.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to end with. Thank you so much for dropping those golden nuggets. I'll carry those with me as well. Chris, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your vulnerability, and for your passion in this space. It is clear that you are a lover of stories, that is really evident. And so I thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Tony.